Hello everyone. Let's get into the next uh, section on purchasing. So we have already got the terms, categories, we have already identified the need. I think now we are well set to proceed with devising right sourcing strategies. We all know that all the companies deal with different goods and services, they have different needs, and we all agree that we cannot have one right sourcing strategy for all kind of products and services. So how to devise the right sourcing strategy for a particular category? So we are introducing category here. Category means specific family of products or services that are used in delivering value to the end customer. So many companies, they also term it as commodity depending on the need what we have already seen. So when we say category, we group the related items, right? And when we group the related items, we try to identify, analyze and manage the sourcing requirements of that particular family of items, right, or specific categories. Okay. So then those category management or category management teams are responsible for all the activities related to sourcing, including supplier development and product improvement, right? Whenever we go to any FMCG retail, you might have seen people walking in the aisles, like who are responsible for their categories. Okay, so when we say categories, so we can say that if it is a particular retail FMCG, they can have bakery items as one category, processed food, beverages. Okay, so these are the categories. So if we have to devise the right sourcing strategy, the best way out is you devise the right sourcing strategy for the particular category, right? So we will dwell into the sourcing strategy for categories, but before doing that, we need to do one very important exercise. And what is that? Let's see, to connect with that exercise, I would urge everyone to read this. Read at your own speed and at premise here. So read it, and then we will discuss what is the summary of this thing, what we can make out of the small reading. Go ahead. What do we infer from this small reading? No standardization in recording the way various category managers have made their spend. Okay. So this is very important and the first step in devising sourcing strategy, right? First to know where do we stand, what are we doing. Okay. It is it's very similar to what Humphrey say that even if you have map and you are trying to go somewhere, it won't be of any help. The map won't be of any help if you don't know where you are. If you don't know the current location of yourself, you won't be, even the map won't be of any help to you. Okay. We want to devise sourcing strategy for each category, but before that, we need to know what we are doing, what we are spending in that category, how we are spending. Okay. So one point here is there is no standardization. If there is no standardization in terms of how each category manager or how we are spending in each category, right, it would be difficult, right? What else? What else you can observe here? Why I need to have standardization? It enables analysis, okay, Analysis of what? What we want to analyze? Huh? How much? Spending across categories. Okay, spending across categories. Okay, as a category manager, I am expert of my category. I know what I am spending. Okay, but this has to be communicated and transformed at the corporate level. Okay, so because you know when we have to identify any inefficiencies, right, the if CPO, Chief Procurement Officer, is the highest designation in the purchasing function, right, they would like to see this kind of spend across categories, right, and this is only possible if we have some standardized way. Okay, so with this backdrop, we will start our today's session on spend analysis, right. We will briefly talk about spend analysis so that we be clear of our steps about sourcing strategy, because once we know where we are, we can devise the appropriate sourcing strategy for the particular category, right. So, what is spend analysis? This is an annual review of an organization's entire set of purchase. Okay, because if I have a bird's eye view of how I have been spending across categories, across business functions, across business units, then only I would be able to identify opportunities of improvement. There would be spend visibility, right? There would be insurance that we are complying by the procedures, okay, right? So, because we have already seen in the organization structure, whether it is center led or centralization, there has to be some policies and procedures and guidelines. Okay, so one has to ensure that are we complying with all those procedures, and control in sourcing, right? Are we going overboard? Is there overspend, right? So, this is possible only if we will do spend analysis. Where is the company spending its money, right? So, the idea is gather the transaction level data relating to purchasing, right? And then once we have this, the spend analysis, that would pave the way to devise right sourcing strategy for each category. Okay. So, we have discussed what is spend analysis, okay, but if the company can collect data at transaction level, okay, for example, here is this Excel visible? If one can have the subset of data regarding the purchasing, okay, suppose here I have been collecting the transaction level data for 20 suppliers, right. You see here, this is across categories and this is the dollar value. This is the value we are spending in dollars, thousands of dollars. You can see here, this is the data, right. So, what we can infer from this data, what we can analyze from this data, what kind of decisions it would lead to. This is the spend across categories we have. Suppose if you have been assigned to do spend analysis, okay. So, you have this data set. Obviously, as a purchasing person, we would collect all the transaction level data, each category, whatever they are spending. From category managers, we would collect data. Let us say this is the data with you. How this data would help? In what aspects? So, we would identify, first thing we can identify which categories are contributing more in the spend, okay. Well taken, okay. You can actually, if you have data, you can do descending or ascending order, sort them, and then you can see that where which category is spending more. What else you can see? Requirement is from compatible suppliers. Yeah, supplier information is there, you know. We can see that, you know, they have been, the things have been bought from the listed supplier or accepted suppliers. That also we can see from this data. What else we can see? So data collection is the easiest job. The difficult job is not even analysis. What do we infer from data? How we can use that data to make certain decisions. What else you can see from this data? What other decisions it would prompt to? You will find that there are different suppliers for same category or same class of items, right? Yes or no? You can see the spend for same kind of goods or products you are buying from different suppliers. Okay, so this data can help in that, right? So once you have data, you can infer. This is just one level of data we have. This is the transaction one. What if I have for each category how many suppliers I'm having? Just to give you an example, for any, like, you know, university setting, like our institute, you know, the security staff, to hire security staff, you know, our institute has to go to, or any academic institute or university, these days they have to go at least 2 to 3 recruitment agencies. They have to outsource from more than one recruitment agencies, you know. They are also sourcing, isn't it? Right? So if we will having transaction level data, we can definitely make out what is the spend for each category. But what else we can see that, you know, for same kind of products, we are dealing with multiple suppliers, right? One can think of justification why so, right? What is the reason? One can analyze. Then, you know, we have number of suppliers, right? For each categories, there are number of suppliers. See, if we would be collecting this data, as I've said, it's a bird's eye view. We can see what is going on for each category. It might be happening at multiple sites, but this is the consolidated data. Okay, so this is, one can go category wise, how many suppliers. Okay, so now what this would infer, if I know number of suppliers per category, what kind of inference I can draw and what kind of decisions it would help me to take. How many sourcing options we have? Okay, how many sourcing options we have, then why I'm going for so many suppliers for particular category, right? And you know, it would also give me other way around. If there are very less suppliers available for particular category, right, that can trigger me to innovate, look for alternate designs. Okay, so that would trigger me to look for alternate material, right, because this is the domain where the suppliers are less, right. That can be a risky thing in future. Okay, so there are so many decisions pertaining to supply management one can take if we would follow the spend analysis. Okay, this was to sensitize you what we could collect and how we can infer and make different decisions. We will come back to this sheet again. Now we'll go back. Now we will do again what is spend analysis, right. Now you can see the annual review of organization's entire set of purchases, visibility, compliance, right, and to get the transactional level data. So what spend analysis aims at? What did the business spend its money on over the past year, isn't it? How this money has been spent. Okay, did the business receive the right amount of products and services given what it paid for them, compliance. Okay, what was the budget set for particular category, how we have spent, have we spent within budget, have we got the products which we have intended for, right? What suppliers received the majority of the business, and did they charge an accurate price across all the divisions? Okay, if you see in the Excel, for same product is supplied by 3 suppliers, okay, but the spend is different. Paper stationery, paper stationery, paper stationery. So this data will give me 3 suppliers, but this is an overall spend. I really don't know how many suppliers we have for paper stationery across business unit, right? So we can collect that data. If small supplier, let's say some small suppliers are like, you know, it's conglomerate 1800, right? I would also like to know what is the price per unit charged by the suppliers. Okay, so we can have another set of data spent by supplier, right? How much amount is spent per supplier. We can also go one level depth, that what is the per unit charged by each supplier. Okay, so once you have, you know, the some concept in place like spend analysis, we can actually gather all transaction level data, right, to make many decisions. So we want to know what is the we would like to know what is the spend across categories and what supplier received the majority of business, and did they charge an accurate price across all divisions, or any discrepancies are there. That would lead to whether to continue with such supplier or not, right? In comparison to the requirements in the purchase orders, contracts and statements of work. Which divisions of business spend their money on products and services that were correctly budgeted for? Overshoot of budget or underspent, right? What are the top commodities? Their spend trends and opportunities for spend reduction. Okay, so what are the top commodities value wise? How are their spend trends, and what are the how we can reduce the spend? Okay, so this is the intention. One should have, you know, the data at commodity level, all categories spent. So when we will collect the data on category spend per annum, how much we are spending on the categories, right? Once you will have that data, you can sort it, but what it would infer? It would infer how much value we are spending on each commodity, right? Okay, so how it will help us in making what kind of decision? Calculate the total spend by commodity from this data. Which category we are buying the more, which is the most valuable category. You do ABC classification. So which are the A category classification? We will analyze them with the Pareto chart, right, and ensure that our strategic focus is also on the same categories. There are no discrepancies. It should not happen. The more spend is coming from the C level categories. Now, one can also collect the data, plot the number of suppliers by category. Now, how this information will help us in making what kind of decisions? Category and number of suppliers. How this information will be useful? You have category. For each category, you have number of suppliers, right? Just I have shown you. how it will be useful. You can actually prepare the charts to have, you know, all view. This is the number of suppliers and category here, right? So what kind of decisions we can make here? This category is having too many suppliers and this is very few. One point we have already covered, right? What else one can think about? What are the various decisions related to sourcing one can make if we are collecting this data under spend analysis? Pardon? Reduce the number of suppliers, right? Huh? So when we say where are the number of suppliers, right? So there is something called supply base reduction. Right? If I have this data with me, okay, so we can definitely suggest, you know, that is there any possibility to reduce the suppliers per category, okay? How, what are the trends, how we are ordering, whether this is a repetitive ordering, okay? So, can we reduce the number of supplier, and other way round, this will also help us in exploring if same supplier can give more than one category. Suppliers supply more than one category. Right? So, there can be a chance that, you know, there are for example, this 1800 suppliers, they are supplying across an organization or across multiple sites, okay. One thing is we can consolidate from 1800, can we bring it down to by 50% to 900 and negotiate the volumes from this less number of suppliers to supply to various business units, right? Category might be same, but the same category might be required in different business units. That is the reason why so many suppliers are there for particular category. So if I have spend analysis in place, I can definitely see that whether I can go for supplier base reduction, number one. Number two, I have a clear cut information on which supplier is supplying what product, right? If supplier 1 is supplying to business unit 1 to business unit 2, right, some part 1, but same supplier is supplying part 2 to business unit 3, business unit 4, right? So if this is, if suppose, you know, supplier, if this is supplier 3 is supplying business unit 1 part 2 also, right, can I consolidate, you know, this, sorry, this is supplier 2, can I consolidate this supplier for part 2 for B1 also? Isn't it? If one supplier is supplying part 1 to business unit 1, business unit 2, supplier 2 is supplying part 2 to business unit 3, business unit 4. But if business unit 1 wants part 2, but it is getting supply for supplier 3, right? Because this information is there if we are collecting data under spend analysis. Can we think of consolidating the part 2 from one supplier rather than having from to suppliers. So, such kind of consolidation, supply base reduction is only possible if we have all this data related to spend, right. Similar thing can be if I have the spend per supplier. This will also lead to make similar decision. Okay. So, when whenever we learn inventory models, okay, we have one component in inventory model as the ordering cost, okay, which is a fixed cost, right, or in general we have something called fixed cost. Fixed cost is something which is not proportional to the volume we are buying, okay. Those costs are administrative cost, or it's kind of managing the relationship cost, right, or sometimes they say coordination cost also, right. So, as we deal with more number of suppliers, right, it adds to the administrative cost also, cost of dealing with so many vendors, so many purchase orders, so many invoices. Those are also administrative cost which has to be considered as a overall cost of purchasing and supply management. Okay. So, the consolidation of suppliers, the consolidation of spend across suppliers, going by supplier rationalization, supplier base reduction, they are very important strategies which can be achieved if we have clear idea about the spend on each category, the trends, how we are spending on each category. Okay. If we are collecting that data, then only implementing such strategies are possible. Okay. So, one can have spend analysis. There are many companies, if you see that there are many players in the market who provide the solutions, the softwares, spend analysis software for companies, right, so that one can see how companies are spending. So, there are opportunities for spend reduction. Okay. So, this is the main idea about the spend analysis. Okay. So, after the spend analysis is done, after we know that what is the scope of reducing the spend or rationalizing the spend, one can devise the sourcing strategy. Okay. So, we have identified needs, right, we have classified needs, we have termed them as categories, okay, and we have done the spend analysis, okay, how these categories, how we are spending on the categories, what are the past trends in that categories, how many suppliers are supplying those categories. Okay. Once we have this data with us, we can devise the right sourcing strategy for each category or commodity or maybe business unit. Okay. So, we will have our right sourcing strategy in the next session.